What is up there, YouTube? This is J-Man Time, and today I have yet another video for you guys on rare weapons of modern conflicts. And this video here is going to be a really controversial video, and I hope YouTube does not take this video down. But today's video is going to be on the ongoing conflict between the State of Israel and the Gaza Strip in Palestine, also known as the 2023 through 2025 Israel-Hamas War. And in this video, we're going to go over some of the rare weapons that have been spotted in use by some of the various Palestinian paramilitary factions and militant groups operating in the Gaza Strip area and also in the West Bank region of the areas that are designated as part of Palestine or the Palestinian territories. We're going to go over some rare homemade firearms, some anti-tank weapons, some drones and UAVs, and even some rare anti-aircraft weapon systems. So let's get ready to go over some of the rare weapons of the Israel-Hamas war, also known as the Israel-Palestine conflict of 2023 to 2025 now. And the first rare weapon that was spotted so far in this conflict is the Palestinian anti-aircraft missile system known as the Mutar 1. The Mutar 1 is an improvised or homemade short-range air defense system that was unveiled in October of 2023 during the first month of the Israel-Hamas conflict. It is manufactured by the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigade, also known as Hamas, and it is one of the rare missile systems deployed by this faction. Now, this is a pretty primitive weapon system. It is an unguided anti-aircraft missile system, very similar to what you would have seen in the early days of anti-aircraft missile defense systems. For example, anti-aircraft rocket/missile defense systems seen during the Second World War. This weapon system has a weight of 80 kilograms. The warhead or rocket weighs 15 kilograms and has a maximum targeting range of 500 meters to 10 kilometers, and each rocket has a maximum speed of just 700 kilometers per hour. Now again, this is a pretty primitive weapon system. It is very similar to the World War II era British Z battery or the German Heinschel HS-297, which were anti-aircraft rocket/missile systems that were developed during the Second World War. They were developed and used during the Second World War. Keep in mind, these are unguided rockets, and the rockets had to be set to detonate at a pre-established altitude. So these are kind of like the anti-aircraft missile equivalent of an RPG or maybe an anti-tank missile, as some of those are designed to detonate after a certain distance or range. So this weapon system is pretty ineffective, and so far it has only been useful in shooting down a number of small, slow-moving Israeli drones. The next weapon system, or the next rare weapon system deployed by the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigades, the AIF Torpedo Storm, also known as the AIF Storm Torpedo, and this is a homemade/improvised long-range autonomous anti-ship drone torpedo system that was also unveiled in October of 2023. This is basically a Palestinian unmanned torpedo drone designed to sink enemy warships, or in this case Israeli warships. This weapon system has a weight of between 75 to 100 kilograms. Its caliber or diameter is 324 millimeters. It has a warhead that weighs about 50 kilograms, and this weapon system here is guided remotely via a laptop in a GoPro camera that is mounted on the periscope of this weapon system. Weapon system's range is largely unknown, but it's estimated to be around 10 to 20 kilometers, and it has a speed of at least 15 to 30 knots maximum. Now, at least 2 or 3 of these weapon systems were deployed between the months of October and November of 2023, but as of 2024-2025, there seems to have been no more deployments of the AIF Torpedo Storm system developed by the Hamas military wing known as the Izz-ad-Din al-Qassam Brigade. Now, the first prototype of this weapon system was actually unveiled way back in the year of 2021. It was a much smaller drone torpedo system than the one we see here, but that prototype seems to have been abandoned. Now, the Israeli Defense Forces, or the IDF, have actually captured at least a handful of these AIF torpedo drones that were in the process of being completed or were in the process of being deployed during the Israeli incursion/invasion of the Gaza Strip in the later part of 2023. So this weapon system here is the first Palestinian drone torpedo system to be used in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The next weapon on the list is actually not really a Palestinian weapon per se. It is actually a weapon system that was also used in the Ukraine war. And this is a modification of a famous Chinese drone known as the Shian DJI. Now, on October the 7th of 2023, during the opening hours of the Palestinian invasion of Israel or attack on the IDF forces along the Gaza border, the Hamas military wing actually used a modified version of a Chinese drone to destroy at least one or two Israeli Merkava tanks. This weapon system here was a modified Chinese Shian DJI spreading wings UAV drone that was modified with an anti-tank missile or an anti-tank mortar system. That anti-tank missile/mortar system was able to penetrate the armor of two Merkava tanks. One Merkava tank that was stationed right next to the border fence along the Gaza-Israeli border, and a second tank that was coming up the street was later hit by a second JDI drone also armed with an anti-tank rocket launcher or a mortar system. This drone has a maximum weight of about 5 to 7 kilograms, and it has a maximum range of at least 100 kilometers or 62 miles maximum. Its speed is largely unknown, and it has a maximum ceiling of around 5,000 meters and an endurance of 16 hours. Now, several other variants or modifications of this drone was also used by Hamas during the early months of the Israel-Palestine conflict, either being used to drop grenades, mortars, or being used as FPV kamikaze drones. So this is kind of one of the earlier weapon systems or earlier rare weapon systems deployed by Hamas forces against the IDF during the first day of the Israel-Hamas war. The modified Chinese JDI spreading wings UAV drones being modified to be used as either anti-tank weapons or as kamikaze/grenade dropping weapons starting in 2023. Another more famous but rare Palestinian weapon to appear in the Israel-Hamas war is the Ababil 1 A1C, A1B, and A1A series of long-range reconnaissance, attack, and loitering kamikaze drones. Now, these drones were actually unveiled way back in the year of 2014 and were used in the 2014 conflict. They were actually developed by a Tunisian jihadist who was later assassinated in the years before 2014, and this weapon system here was unveiled and used during the 2014 conflict. But during the 2023 to 2025 conflict, we've seen several newer or more modernized versions of the Ababil 1 series Palestinian UAV. Now, in general, these UAVs have a weight of about 66 to 70 kilograms, and there are three variants of this UAV. There's a standard or basic reconnaissance version of this UAV. There's an armed version that is fitted with 4 rockets or 4 modified Qassam rockets, and there is a kamikaze or loitering drone variant of this UAV that has also been used in this 2023 conflict. The drone has a maximum range of 100 kilometers or 62 square miles, and it has a maximum speed of 200 kilometers per hour or 120 miles per hour, and it has a maximum flight ceiling of 5,000 meters or 16,000 feet and an endurance of just 4 hours. Now, during the 2023 to 2025 conflict, at least a dozen of these Ababil drones have been used against the Israeli Defense Forces operating both inside the Gaza Strip and outside of the Gaza Strip during this conflict. And at least one of these drones was used to destroy either an Israeli tank or an armored personnel carrier. This is one of the rare weapon systems deployed by Hamas and other Palestinian factions during this ongoing conflict in the Gaza Strip. Another rare UAV system deployed by Hamas is the Shahab series of long-range reconnaissance and loitering drones or kamikaze drones. These drones were first unveiled after the 2021 conflict. This is an even simplified drone system that was developed as a cheaper alternative to the Ababil 1 series. This drone system weighs, again, about 66 to 70 kilograms. Its main weapon system is its 150 to 100 kilogram warhead. Again, this is a kamikaze drone. Its maximum range is the same as the Ababil 1 at 100 kilometers or 61 miles, and it has a speed of around 200 kilometers per hour or 120 miles per hour. Its ceiling is also 5,000 meters or 16,000 feet, and it also has a maximum endurance of about 4 hours. Now, this weapon system here is the most common Palestinian drone used in the Israel-Hamas war. In terms of kamikaze drones, it is the most common kamikaze drone, as at least 50 to 100 or more more of these drones have been deployed against the IDF forces operating in the Gaza Strip and in the areas outside of the Gaza Strip in Israel itself. It is a more effective weapon system as it is mostly being used against Israeli ground soldiers, mostly soldiers in enemy positions, for example machine gun nests and other positions used by the IDF forces on the ground in the Gaza Strip and in other places. It being a much cheaper weapon system to manufacture, meaning the Palestinians can suffer these weapon systems being lost as the Ababil drones are more advanced and more expensive than the Shahab series of drones. Again, there is more than one version of the Shahab series. There is a second version known as the Shahab II, and this one is based more on the Iranian Ababil drone series in terms of its appearance. So weapon system here, the Shahab II was unveiled in the year of 2022-2023 and was first used during this current conflict starting in October of 2023. It has the same specifications as the other Shahab drone. This second drone is also a lot shorter and a lot smaller, technically, than the first Shahab 1 series. As a result, there have been footage of the Shahab 2 being launched from within buildings, whereas the Shahab 1 is mostly launched from the open ground or on public streets in the Gaza Strip. So the Shahab 2 is obviously the smaller and lighter version of these two series of Shahab drones. And both of these drones saw their first combat debut starting in October of 2023. Now let's talk about some anti-tank weapons that have been unveiled during this conflict, or at least that have been very effective in this conflict. In the first series of anti-tank weapons, the most famous Palestinian weapon to be used during this ongoing war in the Gaza Strip is the Yasin 105mm anti-tank missile system, or anti-tank warhead actually. The Yasin 105mm is an anti-tank rocket launcher warhead that was designed for the Yasin series of shoulder-fired anti-tank rocket launchers / recoilless rifles that have been used by the Hamas factions and other Palestinian groups in the Gaza Strip since the early 2000s, since the end of the Second Intifada. And way back in the early 2000s, during the Second Intifada, Hamas unveiled the Yasin 1, which was a copy or reverse engineered weapon system that was based on the old Soviet RPG-2 and RPG-7 series of anti-tank rocket launchers, except this was manufactured in the Gaza Strip. Fast forward to the year of 2023, the Izzeddin al-Qassam brigades of Hamas have unveiled an even more powerful version of the Yasin rocket launcher, an even more powerful version of the Yasin rocket launcher known as the Model 105mm. And this was actually based on a Soviet 85mm tandem warhead for the RPG-7 series of rocket launchers. The Yasin 105, again, is a 105mm tandem double-charged warhead that was designed specifically to defeat the armor of the newer variants of the Israeli Merkava series of main battle tanks. The warhead has a weight of 4.5 kilograms or 9.9 pounds. It has an effective range of between 500 meters to 2,500 meters, and it can penetrate about 600 to 750 millimeters of armor maximum. Now, during the course of this current war in the Gaza Strip, the Yasin rocket launcher, the Yasin 105mm tandem rockets have been seen defeating the armor many of the newer model Merkava tanks and some of the newer Israeli armored fighting vehicles as a whole. In fact, I've seen a number of videos of destroyed Israeli tanks, armored fighting vehicles, and even some vehicles that came from the US, for example, the M113 armored personnel carriers, for example. The Yasin is also used as an anti-personnel weapon, as the double-charged tandem warhead also acts as an anti-personnel weapon against multiple targets in one location. So this here, the Yasin 105, is pretty much the most effective of the newer Palestinian weapons unveiled during this current round of fighting. There is also another version of the Yasin 105, which is a non-rocket launching anti-tank grenade. It is basically the same round modified to be used as an anti-tank grenade / satchel charge that is designed to be placed on an enemy tank or armored fighting vehicle. And I have seen many videos online of Palestinian fighters placing these 105mm Yasin anti-tank grenades / satchel charges on many Israeli armored fighting vehicles, tanks, and even some of the armored bulldozers that the IDF uses. Just like the Yasin 105mm rocket, it is also pretty effective against some of the lighter armored vehicles that the IDF uses or has been using during the ongoing war in the Gaza Strip. Another very cheap weapon system deployed by the Palestinians in the current war is known as the Sear Sear rocket launcher. The Sear rocket launcher is a Palestinian equivalent to the World War II vintage or World War II era American M1A1 and M9 series anti-tank rocket launchers, also known historically or famously as the Bazooka series of rocket launchers. This weapon system was first unveiled way back in 2014, but has reappeared in this current conflict in 2023. In fact, there is a new version of the Sear rocket launcher. Now, the original Sear rocket launcher was designed to fire the old Soviet S-5 rockets, also known as the ARS-57 rockets, and these are 55mm anti-tank rocket launchers that were designed to be fired from rocket pods of Soviet helicopters. The weapon system overall has a weight of about 10 kilograms. It's a pretty light weapon. It's as light as a World War II era M1A1 or M9 bazooka series. It has a maximum targeting range of 800 to 1,800 meters, but its armor penetration is pretty weak at just 130 to 250 millimeters of armor at any range. Now, this weapon system has again appeared during the current conflict in Gaza, and there's a second version, an even larger version, a more modernized version of the Sear rocket launcher. And this modernized version seems to be an enlarged version that is based either on the American M72 Law or the Soviet RPG-22/RPG-29 series of anti-tank rocket launchers. This newer version of the Sear is more advanced looking, but also more simplified, as the original version used the old World War II bazooka battery/wire system in order to fire, whereas this newer version needs to be more modernized and based on, again, either the American M72 Law or the Soviet era RPG-22/RPG-29 series of lightweight disposable anti-tank rocket launchers. And this Sear weapon, both the original version and the newer versions, have appeared during this current conflict starting in 2023. Another Palestinian weapon, and this is one that many of you have probably already seen, is the Ghoul 14.5mm AMR, and this is a bolt-action anti-tank or anti-material rifle that first appeared in the year of 2014. It is actually based on the Steyr, the Austrian Steyr HS50 series of bolt-action rifles, except this rifle here was scaled up to either the 12.7 by 108mm Soviet cartridge or the 14.5mm, the 14.5x 114mm Soviet cartridge. There are several variants of the Ghoul rifle or the Ghoul AMR. There are variants chambered in the 12.7 or in the 14.5mm, and there are also single shot versions, but also variants that have a 5-round detachable magazine. And these weapon systems are mostly manufactured by the Izzuddin al-Qassam brigades of Hamas, but they're also manufactured by other smaller Palestinian groups like the Mujahideen brigades, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and a bunch of other Palestinian factions operating in the Gaza Strip. This seems to be the most effective of the firearms, as it is mostly being used to take out Israeli soldiers in the occupied areas of the Gaza Strip. I have seen plenty of videos of this weapon system being used to take out Israeli soldiers and Israeli snipers in the various battles in the Gaza Strip. For example, the Battle of Gaza City, the Battle of Jabalia, the Battle of Khan Yunis, and also the Battle of Rafah City. So this weapon system is pretty effective. It is kind of a rare weapon, as only a few hundred of these have been manufactured so far by Hamas and some of the smaller Palestinian factions. Now, let's jump over to the West Bank region. Now, also, since the year 2023 to now, there has been a low-intensity conflict happening in the West Bank region between various Palestinian factions operating in the West Bank and the Israeli Defense Forces also operating in the West Bank region. And many of these smaller Palestinian factions, for example, the Lion's Den, which is a Palestinian militant faction operating in the West Bank, or the Al-Janin Brigade, which is also another Palestinian militia operating in the West Bank, have manufactured some of their own small arms to combat the Israeli Defense Forces. One of those weapon systems, and this is a pretty well-known weapon system, and these are newer versions of a pretty known weapon system, is the Carlo Carbines. Carlo Carbines are improvised submachine guns that are based on the old World War II vintage Carl Gustaf submachine gun manufactured in Sweden. Now, those submachine guns were later exported to Egypt and Syria during the Cold War. Some of those weapon systems were also exported to the Palestinian factions operating in both the West Bank and the Gaza Strip before the First Intifada, but also during the First and Second Intifada. Now, the Palestinians have manufacturing their own improvised versions of the Carlo machine pistol / Carlo carbines, but in the 2023 conflict, we actually saw some newer, more advanced tactical versions of the Carlo carbine. So let's look at some of these advanced Carlo carbines that had been spotted during the fighting in the West Bank region. The first Carlo carbine was actually spotted way back in 2021, but has been spotted again in 2023/2024, and that is the Carlo P90 carbine. This is a Carlo submachine gun carbine modified to resemble the Belgian FNP90 PDW. This weapon system here is a submachine gun carbine chambered for either the 9x19mm Parabellum or the .45 ACP. It has a rate of fire of 450 to 600 rounds per minute. It's fed by either a 16 to 30 round box magazine. This is a pretty advanced looking yet unfinished version of the Carlo submachine gun, and it was captured by Israeli forces. Several of these have been captured by Israeli forces during the fighting between the various Palestinian militias in the IDF and the West Bank. First in 2021, the first one you see on screen now, and also in 2023/2024, and now we're going into 2025, the Palestinian Carlo P90. And then we hit the final weapon in this video, and this is actually my favorite looking weapon of all the Palestinian factions operating in either the West Bank or Gaza Strip. And this weapon system here is a Carlo carbine, or a variant of the Carlo carbine, that was captured in the village of Sanur, which is right near the city of Jenin. And this was captured by the IDF forces, who raided a house full of Palestinian weapons, including some homemade weapons like these Jenin Carlo carbines. These Jenin or Sanur Carlo carbines are tactical versions of the Carlo submachine guns that are designed to resemble assault rifles or assault carbines. These weapon systems have attachments you would normally see on M4 carbines or M16s, but these are being fitted to a submachine gun carbine. These weapon systems also again first appeared in 2021, but have appeared more frequently during the year of 2023 and 2024, both in the Jenin region, also in other areas of the West Bank region. These are more advanced tactical versions of the Carlo submachine gun, but they are still chambered for pistol cartridges like the 9x19mm Parabellum and the .45 ACP. Again, they have a rate of fire, if they're fully automatic, they have a rate of fire of between 450 and 600 rounds per minute. Now, there is also another version I have seen of a Carlo carbine, of a Jenin/Sanur Carlo carbine, that seems to be chambered for the 5.56, and that's basically it. But what do you all think of this one? Please tell me in the comment section below. And until next time, this was J-Man Time signing off.